All right, I'm going to go over the next assignment. So if you're done with the tracking of the girl, then you can start on the next one. This is what it's going to sort of kind of look like when you're done. Make sure my audio is working. Hear stuff. There we go. So it'll be another tracking assignment. This time we're tracking a phone. So we'll have a reveal of this as well. So you'll see at the beginning, this is what the initial footage is going to look like. This guy is holding the phone and kind of moving it around. You don't have to use this specific piece of footage. If you wanted to shoot your own piece of footage, you could definitely do that as well. There's actually apps you can get for your phone that are just green screens. So you could hold up your phone like you're holding it up with the green screen and then just kind of move it around slowly and use that piece of footage, as long as your piece of footage is equally as good as this one. So we'll do a build up. Here's how we put all our stuff in there. And then you can see it's moving around with it. Uh-oh. It's hard to see on there, but it says, you switched to an iPhone? I thought you were cooler than that. And then it gets destroyed. We actually wouldn't put that on there. We would just put the first part of it. Okay? So this is the cleaned out version of that. So the video for this is in that same spot. It's, let me just sort this real quick. Audio and artwork and audio. So this one is iPhone holder. There it is. Okay? So very similar process to what we did before. Instead of doing it in Nuke, though, we're going to do this one in After Effects just because the process for Nuke and After Effects is very similar. Okay, just so you can, again, see different ways to track stuff. We'll do this whole part of this whole project right inside of After Effects. So I'm going to make this into a, actually, let me just save this. Yes. New project. And I'm just going to bring in that footage. Just like you would bring in any piece of footage, you just double click it, find the footage. It's in my movies. No, it's not. I put it inside my Dropbox folder. I have too many files everywhere else. 560. And iPhone hold. I believe that's the one. That's the one. Okay. I'm going to drag this down to the new comp button. We get the footage in here. This is 1920 by 1080. There's the piece of footage. So we have a couple things that we need to accomplish on this in order for this to work. For this setup, we still have to track this, but this tracking is a little bit different than the previous tracking in that we don't want to just like put an image here. Pretend that this guy was actually like turning the phone a little bit. We can't just have an image there and have it follow it because we would have this perspective shift that we need to do. So this type of tracking is called corner pin tracking, where we're basically going to track all four of these corners and then take an image and have that image locked to those four corners. Okay? So the tracking part is still the same. Whoops, don't zoom in. I just want to scroll down. There we go. I'm going to go to tracker. I'm going to say track motion. And instead of this being a regular transform, I'm going to say perspective corner pin. And then we get this. Now these work nearly identical to the other one. I can grab the centers and pull that out. We don't want to do that, so don't. If we grab this and do that, it'll still do that. Oops. To move this whole thing, we want to grab within, like between these two bars, grab that and move it. Okay, so that's what I want to do. And each one of these, I'm just grabbing and moving to the corner. Now, after some tinkering, I found that get in there, come on. The default settings were already pretty good. I didn't need to change the shape or size of those, and it tracks really well. Once I started oops, stop that. Once I started messing with the settings, it kind of didn't work as good. All right, so let's drag this one down. Oops, too far, too far. This is the only sucky part about this, is just getting these things lined up. Because when you zoom out in After Effects, then you zoom back in, it zooms back in on what you had selected. Just move to this one and then move it up. There we go. So that. Come on. All right, it doesn't want to move because this one hasn't moved yet, so we'll move him up a little bit. And then we'll move this one up. Okay, and you can see I'm moving it right to that corner right there. And then this one here too. Now with this kind of setup, the phone is actually really nice because we have the green on there, but we don't have a lot of spill from the green. If we had, let's say, a white phone, this green could be casting a little bit of green going around it. We'd need to remove that so it doesn't look like we just slapped an image over this green screen piece of footage, okay? So all of those in the right spot. I started this off at the beginning. I don't think I need to play with any of these. I think it was fine like that, and then I hit track. And then it's going to go through and it's going to track all 4 points at the same time. As it's doing this, we just keep an eye. If you see one of the tracks kind of like moving away from it, then stop it and fix it, okay? But like I said, I found the defaults to work pretty good. At the very end, for whatever reason, the last frame is black, so it does like not work there. But every other frame seems to be fine. Yes, sir?
So you can have like as many as these corner pieces as you need?
We should just need the 4, okay?
Well, I mean, like if you're like having like you're rotoscoping a sword or something.
Oh yeah, well, in this case, we're doing this kind of thing. If we were rotoscoping a sword, we would do a different kind of tracking, which we'll cover next, okay? Cool, so that looks like it worked pretty good. If it doesn't, we can always come back and fix it, okay? So I'm gonna go down here and just make a solid, very similar to the way we did this when we were screwing around with the other tracking. All the hotkeys are up here, layer new, and here's how you make solids, but I hit the hotkey. I'm gonna apply this animation to that solid. So I go to edit target, make sure it's on the solid, which it is, and then I hit apply. And then what that does is it fits that image right to that screen. Each one of those corners of my image fit exactly there. So now when I hit play, you'll see that now that orange square is now moving where that screen was. If this was a bad track, we would see bits of green kind of creeping around it. Just because that corner might just like inch away. When you do it, I'm sure you'll see it the first or second time you track. All right, so there's that piece of footage. Now, I don't want this on here. If I take this and I went to effect, I went to generate, and then I said checkerboard, I get that. That's kind of like a weird thing to even have on there. Let's put this before the corner pin. There we go. And then let's set this blending mode to normal. And our color to black, and our slide to that. There we go. Okay, so this checkerboard without the corner pin is perfectly square. But when it gets dropped on there, you see how it squishes and gets like distorted and dropped onto this image. We don't want that to happen. The reason this happens is because we have a rectangle that's landscape and we're squishing it and making it portrait. That's why we get that. So what we want to do is actually apply this corner pin to something that matches the proportions of the screen. So this is an iPhone, right? That looks like an iPhone? Yeah, because it says iPhone hold too, right? Yeah, whatever. iPhone screen resolution. So if we look up the screen resolution of an iPhone, it's 750 pixels wide by 1334 pixels tall. So if I make a composition that is the same parameters as that, then when I do the corner pin, I don't get distortion, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and make a new composition, and 750 by 1334, that's my sizes right there. I'm going to make it long enough. This is 10 seconds, so 12 seconds is good. So 750, uncheck the box, make sure you're 750 by 1334. This is 2997. I want everything to match exact. The length of time can be longer, that's fine. Black, okay. So now there is my screen. Everything I do for the screen is going to happen inside this comp. Inside of Nuke, imagine we have one tree here, we have another tree here, and eventually those trees are going to go together. That's what I just did. Each one of these comps is just a different branch of that tree. Here's where I did all my tracking. Here's where I'm going to do all my screen stuff. And then inside of this, I'm going to drop that composition in here. Let me go back to my project. go back to the comp, and just drag this down. I'm going to delete that. I don't want that on there. And now I'm going to go back to my footage, go back to my track, and I'm just going to, there we go. I'm just going to apply this to that composition. Apply. Okay. So now this iPhone is here. That composition is there. The composition is empty, so we don't see anything. So I'm going to go into it and just add a new solid in here. And this is just testing. It's always good to test it out before you actually start getting into the creation of all your other stuff. Checkerboard, there it is. Make this huge. Okay. So they're square here. When I go into the other composition, they should still be square. Still square. Okay? Now I'm going to test something else out. I'm going to go back to the composition. I'm just going to make a shape. So I'm going to click on this, let's say, circle tool, click off, and I'm just going to drag a circle over here. And I'm going to fill it with a color like red. I'll do the same thing in this corner. You're good. There we go. Now, what I'm testing here is where the boundaries of my item are. They should, when I go back to the other composition, this circle should be in the top left and the bottom right. If I go back here, there they are. And you'll see they line up perfectly with this. If they were off, I would need to fix something. Typically, they're not going to be off if you got this far. Okay? So the tracking part is done. It tracks. The stuff moves with it. That's all we would have to do for tracking. The rest of this is just creating an interface that looks like an interface and then making it look like all these pieces are blended together. Okay? So I'm going to go in here and just delete now that I know everything works. And I'm going to start bringing some stuff in. So I'm going to go into my import area, and I have inside my folder my P drive here, 2560, tracking. I just put everything inside my tracking folders. It's the same one. Image sequence, artwork, there we go. I have a picture of a mountain I'm going to use, and that's all I did here. I think that's all I did there, yep. So this is basically I'm making an iPhone screen, right? So that's what I'm going to start with. They have a picture. I don't have an iPhone, so I didn't really know what the backgrounds look like. But usually they're cool backgrounds like that kind of stuff. This is a picture that I think my wife took this one. So I'm just going to scale it up. So I hit S to scale it. And I'm just clicking and dragging until it fills the screen. Come on. And then I can switch over and just kind of move this into position. There we go. Perfect. So there's my background. I'm just going to lock it so I don't screw that up. I can double check going back here. There's the background. Okay? And it works. Like if I hit play, there it is. This is the nice thing about After Effects is that we can work in these compositions. Everything is Adobe, so all of our hotkeys and everything else are not the same, but similar enough. And then I can bring stuff in that I want to populate. This whole screen, I don't have to do this inside of here. I could actually go into Illustrator or Photoshop, make the same document size, bring that document in here and use that as this comp 1. Okay? I'm developing everything inside here because it's easier to update and change it if I need to. But I could go into Photoshop or wherever and just build a document that is 750 by 1334 and bring that in. I would recommend if you are going to go into Photoshop and you are going to bring in an image from Photoshop because it's raster, I would double these numbers. So I would go to, what is that, 1500 by 2668 and bring that document in just because it's pixels. When they move around, when they get positioned, they might pixelate a little bit. So we could do that, okay? Cool. So now I'm going to go back into the comp, and I'm just going to start building stuff that I want on here. I want time. So I'm going to go and make a new composition. I'm going to make it 1920, 1080. There we go. I'm going to go to this. I'm going to go to my rounded rectangle tool. It doesn't look very rounded though, does it? No. Let's get rid of the fill. And I'm going to open up my rectangle settings here under my roundness. There we go, and make that a lot rounder. I'm going to go to my text tool. I'm going to click, and I'm going to put in the time. So 12:04. I don't want to use 12 again. 18. Just January 18th. There we go. And then I'll just make this bigger. All your palettes in After Effects are over here, so if you've forgotten that, you can just kind of get a refresher. Or if you haven't used After Effects, I know a couple people in the class haven't yet. Okay, very similar to Photoshop and the other tools. It's just a matter of finding the right palettes. All right. As I start laying stuff out here, it's going to get very disorganized very quickly. Comp 1, let's name it background, or actually screen, because that's where my screen is. Comp 2 is my time, or clock. Clock is appropriate, I guess. iPhone hold, this is my composite. There we go. So I'm going to go to my screen now and just drop in my clock. I try to drop in my clock. There we go. And then I can hit S to scale it, shrink it down until it fits. Yep. And now that looks horrible. I can't read it. So I'm going to go to my clock. I'm going to click on this. Come on, that. I'm going to give it a little fill. Blue. And I'm going to go to the fill and actually just click that. There we go. So the fill here gives us the color. The fill there lets us pick the opacity and the kind. Yes, sir.
To open that, was there a, did you just have the click fill, or do you have to do a right click?
Just a click,
Okay.
just a regular click. Yep. So now if I go back to screen, that automatically updated. Yep, everything else. So I have the same stuff. So I can go to layer, I can go to layer styles, and then I can add a drop shadow. And now again, that kind of pops out a bit more. I could even hit T and then take the opacity down and adjust that if I need to. Okay. Now for my icons, I built all the icons right inside here too. I made a new composition. I'm going to make this 512 by 512. My icons are square. Actually, I'm going to go 600 on the height. Their icons are kind of weird. There we go. So this part is square, but the text hangs below it. I wanted everything to be kind of self-contained. So 512, or let's say 500 by 600 should be a good number. There it is. And I'm going to just use basic shapes and text. That's all I'm doing here. Use whatever you are comfortable with using. I definitely recommend, if you haven't played with After Effects, just doing some of this stuff, get used to it, because a lot of people do just stick to After Effects for all of that. I can't talk and find menu items apparently. There we go. Cool. And then, let's see, this one, we'll go with that color. These don't have strokes on them, I'm pretty sure, right? No, there's no strokes on those. So we'll just get rid of the stroke. You can get rid of the color, click stroke, and go no. Or you can just take the stroke to 0. It's exactly the same thing. I'll put a letter in here. I'll make it a fancy letter. There we go, perfect. Oh, I did download this, DC, there we go. I found a DC Comic font, and if I type in just lowercase letters, oops, come on. Let me lock this so I can double click. There we go. So there's A, B, C. There we go. So this will be flashes, right? So just do flash. There we go. So put flashes icon here. We'll color it red. Actually, we'll leave this white, then we'll color the shape layer red.
Maybe you should make it yellow.
Yeah, you should make the.
Is that what color he is? I don't like flash. I don't like DC. That was the only font I found, though. So make this yellow, you're saying? All right, there we go. That works. Wonderful. All right, cool. All right, so now I'll add another piece of text at the bottom of this. All right, I need to get rid of the DC Comics font here. It's in code. It's all coded, right? There you go. Call flash. And this will be white. That's what all their text is, right? Yep, they're all white. That's just a normal font some guy made. I'm going to give it a little bit more spacing here. That should be good. You want to find something that's going to work for all of yours. You don't want to have one font that's this big, one font that's that small. So if you're going to do call Batman and Superman, make sure that that font would fit both of those words appropriately, okay? So you can kind of test it out. 60 should be good for this. Cool. So that seems to work. Extra stuff. Here's some guides, so you can turn on the proportion guide. And then this line right here is my center, so that line goes right in the center, so that works. Okay, so turn that off. Cool. So now we'll go back to, go ahead.
Does Premiere Pro not have a proportion grid?
I don't know. I would think it should. Is that? If it, editing, for actual video editing. All right, so I'm going to call this over here. This will be flash icon, okay? And then I'm just going to drag this down into my screen and then just place it. I didn't want this to be opaque. Let me pull this back up. There we go. And then I'll fix that red because now I'm blind. There we go. It's better. All right, so then back to screen. Perfect. I'm going to hit scale and scale this down. Think about how many you're going to fit across the screen, and that's the size they should be. So if this is 50%, and just for testing, I'll duplicate it and kind of scoot it over. So maybe this will be a little bit too squished. So I'm going to go to maybe 45%. That might be better. Okay. Now, I also can't see this, so drop shadow again. Layer styles, drop shadow. Cool. That seems to work. I'm going to go into the drop shadow settings and maybe just adjust some of that a little bit. That's good there. I think I want to take that background and just take the opacity of that down. I think that should maybe be too bright. T is opacity. On the wall here, somewhere in that list, I have After Effects hotkeys, so if you want to grab those, you can. You can also just pull this down and then see all the different, opacity, scale, and all that. There we go. Cool. So I pulled that down, so now I can see, the flash a bit better. All right. So there's Call Flash. Now, here's what's cool about this. Just like before, I created this all within After Effects. If I went to Photoshop, I'd have to go into Photoshop, create it, save it, bring it in, save it, bring it in every time. Here, I can just take this flash icon and Control D to duplicate it, and then give this a new name. So, I guess Batman icon, right? So we just double click, and then we're just changing stuff. So we have to just go through the cycle, B, there we go. And then we'll just scale this down. And I want this to fit a bit bigger, maybe. So I'm going to go to rotate. Oh my gosh. All my hotkeys are failing me. There we go. And then we'll say call Batman. All right. And then we'll pick Batman colors, which are probably black and white.
You could actually, you could do like blue and yellow. That works too.
Blue and yellow?
Yellow and have the Batman symbol be black.
Or, yeah, but usually it's like blue for the background, yellow for the back.
Highly detailed people. There we go. We're going to just go with that. And then you guys can do whatever you do. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay.
Black. We're going with classic Batman. It would be yellow, and the bat would be black.
There we go. See? So I can eyedrop in After Effects. I can grip the picture, put it in there, and eyedrop those exact ones if I need to. I don't need to. All right. So here's the next issue we're going to have. Every time I bring an item down, I'm going to have to scale it. I'm going to have to add the drop shadow, and that's going to be really annoying. So I'm going to delete my Batman icon from the composition, and I'm just going to duplicate the flash one and just get this positioned. So proportion grid back on. And I'm using this as, how I line my stuff up. This one is the middle, so that should be perfectly centered. This one should be, let's say, there. There is an align inside here. So if I have this one, and that one, I can say distribute horizontally. That's good. And then I'm going to duplicate those and drag them up. And duplicate those and drag them up. Okay. Turn my proportion grid off. Looks evenly enough spaced. now I'm going to replace one of these with Batman. So, whatever one this one is, that one. I'm going to go here, that's number 1. So I'm going to drag it to the top so I remember it's number 1. I click Batman here, I make sure that's already clicked. I hold Alt and just drag Batman onto Flash. Wait, that's not Batman. Yeah, it is. And now you'll see that it automatically replaces it. The settings are all there and everything, okay? Yep, it has the scale, it has the drop shadow. Anything else I would have done to it, it would have had that too, okay? So then the process is the same. Duplicate it again, argue about the color scheme for 45 minutes. Joker icon. Green and purple. Well, the hard thing is going to be finding the Joker, right? Maybe it's Jay? Nope. Maybe he's not any of these. All right, we'll just do Robin. Perfect. This will be Robin's icon. That's his logo, right? All right. I'm going to go to rotate and then reset this back to 0.
No, wait, it's Ruben.
Are you serious? All right.
It's a reference to Mad.
What are the colors of Robin?
Which one?
I don't. The one with the least amount of yelling. Which one's that? Red and green? Okay. Red. Green. Nope. Oh, that didn't change colors. I changed it in the wrong spot. See what you guys did to me? There you go. I'm picking my own color scheme. That's what we're going to do because I like my colors better than theirs. Maybe that's why their franchise is doing so horrible because they have bad color schemes.
Actually, their franchise is doing so horrible because they have no colors in it.
Yeah.
Aquaman was good though. I have to say Aquaman was
There.
And I like the Mermaid Man trailer better.
All right. So same thing. Drop it on. Boom. Put them in order. I can always come back and change any of these. Change the fonts, change the colors, change any of that stuff, okay? This is the same process for every single one of those icons, whatever I want to do. I'm going to jump back to the composite because there's still a couple things here that I need to do. Number 1, I made my background transparent, right? I took the opacity down to darken it some so I can see those letters. But now some of the green is actually coming through. If I turn this off and on, you can see how that green is a little bit more there. On this screen, I can't have anything transparent or I'll see that green. So I'm going to go to the very bottom, make a new solid. I'm going to give it a color. I'm actually going to eyedrop just a bluish color from here. And that will be my underlying color. Okay? And that way my background isn't going to like transparent to black. It's actually transparent to blue, which will give it a nice little tone to it. There we go. That's much nicer. Now, I'm also going to duplicate my screen. If this is a screen, typically there's going to be a glow. Well, before I duplicate it, I'll show you why I'm going to do it this way. If I go here to Effect, let me save my stuff first. That's not this class. This is this one, 2560, tracking, Sarcona. If I go here, I go up to my effect, I say stylize, and I add a glow. This is what the glow is going to look like. It's taking the brightest parts of the image and making those pieces glow. Even if I pull the threshold down, now it's like overblown. I could pull the intensity down, but then I still kind of lose that. So there's not a whole lot of stuff specifically that we can do right to this. We can still play with the color or the stuff and modify it, but I like doing it this way better. So I'm just going to duplicate the screen. I have two screens on top of each other. I'm going to blur the top screen. Okay, so you can see how blurry this is. And then I'm going to go and take this and just set this to be an add. Okay, so that's why I changed this mode. Now I can hit T to get the opacity and then just pull that down some. There we go. So, no glow, glow. So you have a nice little glow on top of this. That makes it feel like the phone is actually illuminated some. Yep. Gaussian blur, then change it to here. You can also do lighten and play with that too. Yeah. This one didn't turn out very well. Add. There we go. What does the Gaussian blur do? Yeah, just blurs the whole thing, right? Cool. So that's part of it. The other thing is, if this is a phone, typically you would have some kind of bounced reflection that we would see in here. In this original video, there wasn't one, but we're going to add one anyway, okay? I'm going to go to my pen tool. I'm just going to draw what I think this bounced reflection should look like. It's not going to be green. I'll fix that. So I'm just using the pen tool just like you would in other programs. Instead of the fill color here, I'm going to go to gradient, and I'm going to pick different colors. I'm going to pick this one, which is going to be white. I'm going to pick this one, which is going to be black. I'm going to go to the top and say this opacity will be 0, and that one will be 100%. Cool. So now when I come down here and I start to open this stuff up here, here, and here, and gradient, do I see it there? No. When I go to my start point and my end point, I can adjust where these are at. So I'm just adjusting where these positions are. Oh, wait. If I'm in the move tool, there we go. Now I get my points. So I'm just going to move this like that. So I want the crispest part to be like right here and the softest part to be at the bottom. That way it looks more like we're getting a crisp line from a reflection of light, and that's just going to fade into it. Okay? Now I need to cut that part off. If this was inside Nuke, we could just say, okay, I'm going to take that screen, I'm going to use the alpha channel from the screen, and that's what's going to cut this off. After Effects is similar, we just have to go through it a different way. So on the shape layer, on Effect, I'm going to go down to Channel and say Set Matte. Okay, and this I just pick. The screen is what I want, not this screen, because that's a blurry screen. I have to rename that. This is my real one. And then if I click on this, I'm going to click on this button. Nope, that breaks it. Why aren't you working? Screen, alpha channel. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. Oh, I have to pre-compose this again. That's what it is. I'm going to take my original screen, and I'm just going to Control-Shift-C, move everything into the other composition, screen flat. There we go. And now that'll work. Okay. So I had to do an extra step, obviously, because After Effects is a bit different. But now I have one composition that is just the screen, just like this. And then inside that one is screen. And then inside that is all that other stuff. So this is going to be a blurry screen, which I'm actually going to do the same thing. Let me go to here. Oops. To Effects. I'm going to delete that blur. I'm going to replace this with screen flat. Same way I did the alt-click drag. Or not. Let me just delete that and then drag screen flat down again. Go to blur. This will give me a better blur anyway. That's what I wanted. Whenever you're doing compositing stuff, it's never going to be a linear path of this is exactly what to do every single time. Ideally, you're going to look at it and say what needs to be fixed and figure out how to fix that stuff. So that's going to be better. So I'm going to add this in here, go back to my opacity, drop that down. All right, like that. It looks very similar, but good enough. All right. So now I'm going to go to the shape layer and just take this opacity down some. I don't want it to be too much. And I think I'll also give this a little bit of a blur. So I'm going to go to Effect, Blur. What was that? On the shape itself, I can't. If this was a mask, I could. Yep. That's why I'm going to blur it this way. So it was either draw it in a different shape and then use the gradient and blah, 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 or do it this. So there we go. I soften that. So now you see we have this nice soft edge. I'll take the opacity up so you can see it better. So nice soft edge right there. Cool. Okay, and then again, everything works. The shape itself does not need to move. His movement with his hand is so subtle, we don't need to actually move that shape on top. It's basically just sitting there so that as he moves it, let me turn it back on so it's obvious what's happening. You'll see that it looks like that reflection is just sitting there, which is what it would do. The reflection wouldn't move with the phone. That would look fake, okay? Yeah. Now, if you rotated the phone and we had other stuff in the scene, we would have to do something else. But this works perfect for this kind of movement. So we'll just take that down, oops, to like 30 or something. And if you don't play it while you're trying to preview it, it'll actually update. There we go. All right, that's good. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go back in here, make some folders, and start organizing. So this one will be compositions. This one will be, whoops, artwork. This one will be movies. And then I just pull these out. For whatever reason, it always just puts everything together. Here's my compositions, drop those in there. Everything with this icon is a composition, so compositions go into the composition folder. Movies go into the movie folder. And any artwork I bring in goes into the artwork folder. Okay, so let me save this. Let me open up my previous one. Corner pin tracking. There we go. So you'll see it's the same thing. Here's the iPhone. I did add a black solid underneath, which really you don't see it, but it's there. I use that basically just so that when I do my other stuff, I would have it. Cool. So that's all the same. Here's my screen. Same exact thing. What'd I do? The lazy version, what are you talking about? Call Beetlejuice, call Ghostbusters, call me maybe, call Heroes. No, that's how it works. Okay, same process. There's my screen. There's my clock. This was the error in the other stuff. We don't need to worry about that. There's the track. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yep, it'll be on canvas. Okay, so once I have all that stuff done, then it's just a matter of doing those final touches. Just like I mentioned before, oops, wrong one. We want, obviously, some polishing that happens to these. I like to take the entire thing, so this is the entire thing, and I put that into a composition. If I go here, this is iPhone hold, somewhere in there, there it is. I'm going to drop this onto the new comp, so now he's all by himself. This is all the stuff put together. Then I can go into my effects, go to color correction, and add any of these. So if I wanted this to have a tint to it, I can go to, let's say, photo filter, and you can see there's a nice warming photo filter on top of it. Makes it look nice. I can also go to color correction and go to curves. And then the same tools you would use, obviously, in Photoshop, you can have them here. I can duplicate this. I can create a ellipse tool, change the mode to multiply, and then invert my mask, and then open up the mask and then feather it so it's nice and soft, and then expand it. And now we have our vignette. Okay. Maybe take the opacity down on this to like 50. There we go. And then I think too, I'm going to jump back to iPhone hold. On my screen, which is right here and here, you'll see that I added a little bit of grain to this, just so it kind of matched the grain that he had. So here is no grain. I don't know how good the projector is going to pick it up. Yeah, it's not picking it up very good even on my screen right now. Final output none. Here's what it looked like before with this bigger grain. Why aren't you updating? There it is. Zoom in really close to the Ghostbuster. You can kind of see the pixels there. All right, well anyway, I put it to 0.2 and 0.2 for the intensity and size. That seemed to be a good number to put in there. I also did a channel blur on this so that the edges of this weren't crisp. So if I turn this off, sometimes when you take a completely solid item and you bring it into this thing that's kind of fuzzy, the edges can't be perfectly crisp. So turn this back on. So what this does is it just kind of blurs the edges just a little bit, and actually makes it feel like it's kind of inset some as well. Back to iPhone hold. Okay, so that was all done in the other comp. Cool. So that's the end product of the composition. Now I just need to go and do what we did in Nuke, the first project, grab the still images of what it looks like along the way, okay? This part is one of the issues with After Effects. It's not super easy to do as much as in Nuke. In Nuke, we can just say, I want to see this and write it out. In After Effects, we have to start turning layers off in order for this to happen. So I'm going to go to my iPhone hold, which is all of my stuff put together. And I'm just going to turn everything off, make sure I'm at frame 1. And then I'm just going to, I don't know what happened there. I'm just going to go to Save Frame As, File. This brings the render queue open. Let me delete all these extra ones I have in here. There we go. I'm just going to give this a name. 01, start of process. Hit this, hit render, and then it saves it. We even get a sound effect. Yeah. And then I do the next thing. And then I go back to composition, save frame as, file. And I'm putting a number here so it's easy for me to remember. This is the first thing, this is the second thing. Black screen. Turn the next thing on. Go back to composition, go back to save frame as, file. Very repetitive process. If I have to do this again, I have to go through each one of these again and redo this whole process. 03, screen on. It's written out. Okay, so once you've done all those, this one, the glow, the reflection, and then jump over to here. Okay, that's where it left off in the other one. So then I would do another one with the curves on, another one with, let's say, the photo filter on, and then another one with the vignette and other stuff on there. Okay, just have several of them, obviously, to show the process of how it goes from A to B. Then I'm just going to bring everything in. So double click, find your stuff. So here's all my stuff. Import it. Make sure sequence is not clicked. Sometimes if it's set to 0, 1, if I click this, it'll actually read 1, 2, 3, and it'll bring them in like that. Don't let it do that. So I'm going to go here to my artwork. Here's all my stuff. And under compositions, my final comp is iPhone Hold 2. I'm going to drag this onto new composition. Say single comp, no sequence of layers, hit OK. All right, so here's all my stuff. Oops. I need each one of these stills to hang out for like a second. So I'm going to go to about a second. I'm going to drag all these over. There's a hotkey. You can use Alt right bracket. And then I'm going to put them in order. So the first thing was green screen. Nope, that's green screen removed. Vignette added. All right, let me see which one is this. This? No. There it is, plain green screen. And that's why you want to name them, so that you know which one is which. Green screen added. Glow will be one of the last things. Photo filter will be after that. Screen will be here. Vignette will be, I think, there. All right, that should be good. Okay, so those are in order that I want them to show. So I'm going to click the first one, shift-click the next one, and I'm just going to go to Layer, nope, Animation, Keyframe, Sequence Layers, no overlap, hit OK, and then do this. Now this is going to be the boring way. I will show a fancier way after I do this one. I need to make my comp longer, 15. All right, let's go to 20 seconds. All right, so this is the boring way. Boop, boop, boop. Everything happens, and then it goes into the video. Okay, so here's all the stuff. It goes from here, here, there, adds this, adds this. Oops, those are backwards, right? Yep. I'd have to swap those two. There we go. That. These two also. Again, a good idea to rename your stuff. Or you did it. There we go. And then it goes in right into the video. Okay. So that's the boring way to do it. If you want to do it a bit fancier, you can do some animation techniques to transition between these, which means you just have to kind of lay it out a little bit different. So I'm going to stagger these like this so there's a little bit of an overlap, and I'm just going to bring the ticker right to the end. I'm going to go to this one, which is on top. I'm going to go to Effect, under Transition. These are all different transitions, nice ways to go from one image to the other. I'll show you what they are in a second, but I'm just going to use Linear Wipe because that's the easiest one. I say transition complete is 0, and I hit the stopwatch. I scooch up a little bit, and then I say transition complete 100. And then what we get is this little wiping across that happens. Okay, so very similar to something you would see in any editing program. Then I would go to the next one, same thing. If I copy this transition, I go to this layer, I make sure my ticker is in the exact spot, and I hit Control V. It'll paste it in the exact spot, and then wipe on again. So same thing, slide this here, paste it, oops, make sure I'm on the right one, paste it, and you'll see that happen. Some of these are going to be a little bit more obvious, okay? And I would just continue this process all the way down to the very end until everything gets added in there. So on this one, that's what I did. I apparently lied. Why isn't that working? Oh, I took it off. Dang it. I had it on there, and then I took it off because I wanted to show it. These are all of the different transitions. Not in here. Transitions. All transitions. Okay. Oops. Let me squish this over to the side. Let me hit fit. There we go. So these are all the transitions that are inside that menu. These ones here work really good when you just have basically anything, okay? You can have two solid colors and they work really well. When you have these three down here and even this CC Wipe one, well, I guess these three are the main ones. They need some kind of image because they're actually using brightness values from the image to transfer their stuff. So Venetian blinds, changing some of the parameters, you can get these kind of things. There's radial wipe. If you do one of these transitions, keep it subtle. You're not showing off that you can use a transition. You're just showing off going from one piece to the next to the next. So that's why linear wipe is good, because it's just a wipe across there. But some of these other ones, like this grid wipe, it might be a cool one to use too. Whatever you use, just use that same one for all of them. All right, it's about to play the whole thing in real time. It's thinking. You are so close to doing it. Come on. I know you can do it. All right, I'm just going to click and drag. There we go. Woo. Okay. So you can see how these are going from basically one color, which is purple, to this other color, which is blue. And then back again. Okay. So if you like any of those, you want to use them for your stuff, you can. You definitely don't have to do that. And then before you render, your final step is to make sure motion blur is on. Motion blur in After Effects is a two-step process. You go to where motion is happening. In this composition, I have add grain and channel blur. This layer actually doesn't move. I go to this composition. This is where the screen is. I have to click motion blur on here and motion blur on there in order to actually see motion blur happening. If this is off, motion blur isn't there. You can see the motion blur kind of kicking on. If I go into this composition and I turn it on, that does nothing for actually turning motion blur on. I have to go where the motion blur is happening. I lost it. In here, there it is. Nope, it was back one. In here, okay? Make sure motion blur is on here, make sure motion blur is on there, and then I should see that motion blur happening. I don't need to do it to every icon because the icons don't move. The icons are locked to the screen. If I had something like my error message here that pops up, so many different menus. This is why Nuke is nice for finding your stuff, because we don't have a million different compositions. iPhone hold, yes, track, screen, error, there it is. So as my error message comes up, you can see there's motion blur on that. that happens inside this composition, so that's where I click motion blur on here, and that's where I click motion blur on there, okay? And then this process for making a movie is the same thing as we did before. Add to render queue, or media encoder queue, H.264, render it out, okay? So by the time you're done, you should have something like this. That's the boring way, like I said. And then you can do the fancy ones with the transitions and whatever else. All right. Yeah. This is how many compositions you may have if you do everything in After Effects. Each one of these icons that I did in here, if I were to just make that whole screen inside of Photoshop or Illustrator, I wouldn't need any of those. I could just have one image that I brought in. This will be in the book. Let me just go through this quick. Not PokeMac. It is corner pin tracking. There it is. So this one, corner pin tracking, the due date is February 27th, which is next Wednesday. Should be plenty of time to get this done. Like, the tracking was literally the easiest thing inside here, and the rest of it was just creating all the artwork to get it to work and then making sure it looks nice. So we're exploring corner pin tracking. We'll be doing 2D track phone movement, add a screen background to the phone and appropriate icons. You can, but don't have to animate the screen comp. You could have each one of those things happening. You could have the guy holding his phone, he has YouTube up or some app like that, and that is kind of moving around and then swipes down or whatever happens and then whatever. Add appropriate finishing technique, noises, blurs, glows, vignettes, color grading. Keep your stuff organized. You'll be turning in a movie with breakdowns, 12 points, and so on. Pretty straightforward. You should have the noise / grain in there. You'll have the glows. You'll have some blurs. And then you'll probably have a vignette and color grading. Because you want it to look different. You don't, any video you get shouldn't look like the exact footage that you have. This is a pretty boring background that we have here. This, once it loads, it looks much better. Well, now with the error message on there, like that. There we go. Okay, so there's the before, there's the after. Okay, even if it's subtle, even if it's just something lighter and then eventually you build up to it, that's fine. I just want to see something there so we're moving towards being able to do that kind of stuff. Cool, questions yet? Yes, sir.
So are we allowed to use our own footage? Can we like go on film to have something like even a video file for what we put on the screen?
Yep, you can do that too. And if you do, just kind of keep the same thing in mind. He has his phone, he has that green screen, and his thumbs are nowhere near the front of it. That will cause other issues. So keep them on the side, slow movements, high resolution, clear, nice background.
Where's this file under?
On the Dropbox folder that I have on Canvas. Cool. Anything else? Yes, you do. Or make it on your own. Yes, sir.
For the icons, if we decide to make them in Photoshop, are we allowed to like pull any like images that we could use?
Any images you use should be stuff that you've created or stuff that's free. So if I go to textures.com, all of their stuff is free, I can use that. If I go to Google and I just grab this image of Batman and throw it on there, that's their image. We don't want that. Yes, sir.
So I assume we can't take the tracker from RoboCop and put it in there.
Not unless you remake it.
I can do.
So just like for example, in the example phone, I noticed one of the apps was like the Call of Duty one where you had like the logo.
I drew that.
All right, so like you are allowed to like recreate stuff.
Yeah. That was so far off from probably the real logo that I would be clear. Yeah. So this is just shapes. The same way I drew the other stuff, I just added these shapes inside here. And the same thing with the Ghostbuster, I just kind of drew that too. And that's the only thing that is from that font, but it was a free font. Yep, they're all in After Effects.
That's the real Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters logo, yeah. It's not the new one. Well, obviously it's not. The real one.
Say real Ghostbusters, but then they screwed it up.
Yeah, as long as you pick like good colors and the stuff is clear, you'll pretty much be able to do anything. If you put a letter on each one of these squares, it'll look better than trying to throw a bunch of crappy graphics on it that aren't yours. And then if someone says, well, is that yours? You have to say no. Even the Heroes one, that's, you know,
I may or may not have also met the cartoon.
yeah, cartoon. No, it's a horrible show. Anything else?